Alright, everybody, welcome back to another episode of The Real Review, and it is July, and it is Stay Out of the Water Month. My name is Kevin.
And I'm John.
And we are The Real Movie Guys. On today's very special episode of July's event, Stay Out of the Water Month, we're going to be reviewing the infamous, amazing, near-perfect film
The great movie.
known as Jaws. It's kind of funny. Usually this is the part where I'll give you a little summary. I'm not sure really what much there is to say about this. Essentially, a killer shark starts terrorizing a beach community. After that, it's up to the sheriff, a marine biologist, and a fisherman to stop the shark. Essentially, that is the movie. In a nutshell, that is the movie Jaws. Before we continue, if you've never seen Jaws, shame on you. But we do recommend that there will be spoilers in this review, so if that's something you would like to avoid, we do recommend pausing the video, checking out the movie, which you should have already seen it. I really, really hope so. Coming back after you watch it, come back, hang with us, or if you don't care, just stick around to hear what we have to say. I'll say it right now, Jaws is in my top 5 favorite movies of all time. It is. I think it's a perfect movie.
What number?
I'll not give a number to it. I'll say it's in top 5. You shouldn't do that. I can't. It's like picking your favorite child. You don't do it.
But you always have one.
It's fun. It's hard because when I watch Jaws, I think of it's funny. I think of this is a perfect movie. So whenever I watch something horror related, thriller related, something along those lines, I compare it to Jaws. Maybe not like. I get there's different circumstances, but I always have Jaws in the back of my mind, like, Jaws did that better. Or, Jaws just better, well put together. It's hard to find new things to say about Jaws, because if you've watched any documentary, read a single book of any kind relating to film, I think Jaws is mentioned about 5,000 times. So I really want to start with, John, if you could pick one scene from this movie, what would your favorite scene be from this movie?
My favorite
scene? Favorite scene from this movie that sticks out to you. Favorite scene?
I think my favorite scene would probably be... Actually, one of my favorite scenes is where they actually capture the tiger shark.
Mm-hmm.
And they got him just hanging up there, and people are like taking pictures with him, thinking they're all so cool. And there's like 1,000 people there, just this fish out of the water. And like, you could imagine, like, if this fish is dead, it stinks. So these people are just hanging around there. They're like, oh, this is kind of cool.
It's funny. You would think you'd pick a scene with the shark, right? Because that's what Jaws is about, right? Jaws is a shark attack movie. I wouldn't say that's my favorite scene in this movie at all. I'd have to say, honestly, my favorite scene is really just Roy Schneider. He's at his kitchen table, and he's sitting there, and you can see he's clearly upset with everything that's going on. He's a lot going on at this point. Let's put it this way: he's a cop from he's now in Boston. They make fun of the whole Boston thing, and they're talking about it, and his son, Roy Schneider, puts like his hands on his like cheek like this, and like on his head, and his son's imitating him, everything he does, and you're like, Kevin, that's a weird. Why would you like that? It's so natural, that scene. It's so natural, and I behind the scenes, of course, that scene was improvised 1,000%, which ironically is most of this movie, is improvisation. Yeah. I mean. Well, The most famous thing about this, and most people probably know this, so it's probably like just telling it all over again, but the shark didn't work. They had a mechanical shark for this movie. It never worked. So Steven Spielberg's like, what am I going to do? I have no
Well,
shark in a shark attack movie. So
it's
because of
so
that, they have to rely on the characters. And all of these characters are so fleshed out, likable in their own way, that they carry this movie to, like, I hate to say it, unimaginable depths at that point.
well, it's so funny that you even like talk about that too, because after watching this movie so many times and then going back
Right.
and watching it again, it's almost scary how fake the shark looks.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's so scary when you're thinking about the shark. Like if you never saw the movie and the
Right.
first time you're watching it and they have that first shark attack and the second one and you're like, "Oh, this thing must be like a crazy huge big shark."
Right.
And the first time that you get to see the shark,
Right.
it looks so bad that it looks like it's an animatronic from like a
Right.
like a theme park or something.
But remember,
And it's so weird
right.
because I look at it and I look at it that way,
Mm-hmm.
but then in certain scenes, in certain shots
Mm-hmm.
that they get of it, it looks crazy awesome,
Right.
which is very weird for me. Like the close up you see of it, it looks not great.
No.
But the far away shots makes you think that the shark was like a real shark. You know what I'm saying?
So we'll dive deeper into that. Why does this movie work so well? Besides, we just talked about the amazing character acting, which is, there's no question there. We'll talk about that later. They use the idea that we never see the shark till the end. We really don't get a clear look at the shark till the end of the movie. Steven Spielberg has to rely on effects, camera work, anything he can do to build suspense and tension, to hide that shark, show that it's really a threat without you actually seeing it. So what that does to the viewer is your imagination goes wild with what that thing must look like or what it is, because you never actually see it. You don't. You just see a fin at most. So in your head, you're like, oh my God, this must be like the scariest looking thing. What could it possibly look like? And then you see it and you're like, all right, well, whatever. It's you don't care, I think, at that point. I think once you see the shark, you don't care because you're so invested in this adventure of wanting to kill this stupid thing. You don't care how fake it looks.
It almost looks like when you would think of like Flipper with big teeth, though. Like that's how I kind of looked at it, and I was like, okay, it's just Flipper with big teeth.
But it's funny because even at the you only get even a couple close-ups of the actual shark. Even at the end, there's still not that many. I mean, there's just the one where he kills Quinn, and then there's that's the most famous close-up. He's eating half the boat, and then he devours Quinn whole, which is the most badass death probably in a movie. It's up there, but not even that. And then you have the shark out in the distance. You see it like struggling to chew the wire, which it looks stupid. You can argue it looks stupid, but again, you don't care. Because you want to see that thing dead. After all this adventure, they do so much with so little. They do so much with so little. I can't understand how a modern day director can complain. Because look what they had to deal with.
Well, I also think that the way that they actually kill off the shark too, in a way to me, especially at that time, it's very original, and I felt like it was an awesome way to like kill off the shark. Not like just stab him or something, or just shoot him in the head or something. It was like an epic way for like the shark to go out. Like it was almost like the perfect death for the shark.
Right.
But I also found something weird about this movie too.
Yeah.
That it was rated PG.
Yeah, it is weird. I know.
I feel like if that movie came out now, it could get an R rating.
Mm-hmm.
Because like just from like just the blood, the violence, the nudity, or portray of nudity per se. Like I feel like it.
That's not
when I saw
movie.
that it was when I saw that it was PG, I was very shocked by that. I was like, oh, really? Because after knowing all that and then finding out that it's PG, because I didn't really notice that till like now.
Yeah. No.
I was like, oh.
It's crazy. It's crazy how much the times have changed from when this came out to now. We're in such a different world and way of thinking. It's crazy. I think one of the themes for this movie, and I'm not even talking about anything actually in the movie, I think a theme of this movie is less is more. If you ever want to point to somebody, nowadays we're so focused on big special effects. We're focused on the CG and even the practical, whatever you want to focus on. It always has to be bigger is better. That's not the case with this movie. Less is more. Not showing it. Letting your imagination do some work. Like, it has to do some work in this movie, but it's so much for the better. There's so much more enjoyment out of it. I mean, I think that's why this movie, in a way, I think this movie will remain timeless. It's not. It captures a perfect era of fear because, essentially, people are still afraid to go in the water because of Jaws. I know people that don't like to go in the water because of Jaws. I mean, is there going to be a shark attack? More than likely not. I mean, there's like a 1%, maybe. Not even 1%. I'd say probably even lower. But the fact is, this movie drilled that into your head so strongly because, not because it showed you a fake shark. If it showed you a fake shark, the whole movie, this would have had no effect. We wouldn't even be talking about this movie. But the fact is, your imagination, they cemented what that shark looks like. No matter what they showed you at the end of the movie, that shark that was burned into your brain is whatever you created. And it lingers in the back of your head every time you look at the water.
Well, yeah, like, also, like you're saying, too, like, your imagination puts in your mind what you think this shark's going to look at, like, what this shark's going to be, what this shark has, and what it does. Like, it makes you have your own vision of what the shark is, no matter what they show on screen.
Right.
And also, like what you're saying with people how this movie still keeps people out of the water today.
Yeah.
The only people that are going to get eaten by sharks are the people that are staying out of the water today anyway. Like, the one time that they go in, that's when the shark's going to get them.
It probably is. So that's funny. So, again, we talked about less is more with this movie. That's a big thing. The other thing, which we briefly touched on, is the acting. So the acting is superb in this movie. I mean, to find a better cast, I don't know. It's hard. Especially three characters in particular. So you have Roy Schneider, who plays Chief Brody, iconic, right? Richard Dreyfuss, who plays Hooper, which is just amazing in general. And then Robert Shaw, who plays Quint, the most badass fisherman to ever walk the face of the planet. But alone, they're interesting characters, but together, their chemistry is so strong. So let's touch on Roy Schneider first. I kind of want to talk about each one because they are special characters. So you have Roy Schneider playing Brody. You know, he's just transferred in. He's new to the area. A very common man, right? I think he's easily relatable. I could see myself being like a father, being like him. I could see, just like, all right, let my kids play, try to do what's best for my family kind of thing. You want to try and do the right thing at all costs.
Yeah.
But he elevates himself so much because I feel like he's like the only man that knows he knows something's going on, but he doesn't know exactly how to deal with it. So he's just trying to do his best.
Yeah.
And I think that's such an admirable quality. Like, he doesn't know what a shark attack is. There's no idea what that is. So he's researching it. He's got his books. Like, I can see myself doing that. Like, if I were in a situation, I'd be like trying to figure out what the heck to do.
Well, he also
the best way and only way I can,
Yeah. Yeah, and he also wants to close the beach, but that other guy's like, we can't close the beach. We need the money.
Oh well, yeah.
And that kind of like
need our summer dollars.
that kind of makes it like even more realistic too, because you always know that there's somebody always out there that's always like, well, I'll put people's safety at risk or something just to make an extra buck or two. Right. Like, there's definitely places out there now that will put your life at risk just for a couple bucks or two.
And it's just the way his performances, like the way he deals with the first like shark attack scenes that have him in it. He's sitting on the beach. He's just watching his kids. He's with his wife, his family. His kids are playing on the beach. And then it's weird. It's a weird camera trick I've always really liked. And I don't really see it emanated too often. So he's staring at the water. Someone walks by. The camera zooms in. Someone walks by. The camera zooms in. It's like a weird cutting thing I've never seen in another movie, and it's so realistic. Like, if I were worried about a shark and I were watching my kids, I feel like I'd just be like, staring directly at that, making a beeline, my vision to the water. And that's what it feels like. And then when something actually happens, it's just that sense of dread. Like, you feel his dread, and you feel it inside of you. Like, something just happened, and I got to save everybody, especially his kids on top of that. I mean, he loves his family, but... that's of course his number one priority, but everybody else is too. He's generally like a good guy. Chief Brody is a good guy, and you feel that in the movie.
100%. I totally agree.
So we got Chief Brody, and then we have Richard Dreyfuss, who plays Hooper. Hooper's kind of a dick. Let's be honest. He's the smart guy, right? He's the smart guy. He's fell in his family's money. He doesn't like to talk about it, but he brings it up. So, he's kind of like, well, whatever, I'm filthy rich and whatnot. He studied at the Marine Institute.
Oh
He
my
knows
God.
everything about sharks. He knows everything. But at the same time, he can't believe what he's seeing. So for all that experience and everything that he has, he's still amazed and fascinated by this shark. But does he care about everything that's going on? He does, I think, to an extent, obviously. But he's more about the science of everything that's happening.
Well, my favorite part too is that he's like this science guy, all gung ho about sharks, but he's the guy driving the boat.
Right.
Like that's his task. His task has nothing to do with like how skillful he is or how much he knows about sharks or anything about the ocean. His object was just to drive the boat.
Well, it's
and
funny.
How the cops doing everything, all like the other work too, with like the fishermen.
Well, another one of my favorite scenes in the movie is when Hooper goes over to visit Brody and his family, and he's trying to ask them, they want to exhume the body of the tiger shark that they caught, because at this point they thought they caught Jaws. It wasn't the Jaws shark; it ended up being a tiger shark. Hooper doesn't, judging by the bite radius, knows it isn't the shark, but he's not saying. He's like, all right, I just want to make sure. I'm pretty sure it's not. But he goes over and he brings a bottle of wine over to Brody and his family. And Brody takes the wine, he opens it, and just starts pouring it in a glass. I'm talking like a giant cup. He just fills the whole cup, and then he just passes the bottle over. And it's just a funny interaction. Like Brody's like, all right, I got this smart guy here. I know what he's talking about, and he's dreading it. He's dreading what he knows is to be the truth, because he's the one that really looks to Hooper for the information about sharks, and they do have a bonding experience, which I think is great too. Almost like a camaraderie of almost like Brody's like, all right, I look to Hooper. Hooper knows what he's talking about. I have an expert here. What more do you need? And that's where they form their camaraderie as far as the shark. You have Brody, who has to work everything around, but you have Hooper, who's telling him, what to do, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, definitely.
And then we move to Robert Shaw playing Quint the fisherman, who scratches nails on a chalkboard and gets a room's attention, and just an amazing actor.
And his lines in this movie are absolutely amazing.
But why does he work so well? I think one of the main reasons he really works so well is because he can bounce off Richard Dreyfuss. Now, I don't know, from what I've seen in like a lot of behind the scenes things, they didn't get along very well. And I think you could see that at times, for sure. Richard Dreyfuss is everything. Hooper is everything Quint hates, right? Essentially, he's the rich boy off the mainland who doesn't know how to sail. But then Hooper's like, well, I know how to tie a knot, and I do know how to sail. And then Quint's like, well, you're not as good as me, boy, like kind of thing. And they have like this real, they have a modern day versus old school kind of dynamic going on, which they respect each other. Towards the end, they start to respect each other, but at the same time, it's such a great dynamic, an amazing dynamic between two characters.
Now you said that those two hated each other. You said?
Yeah, they weren't very fond of each other, from what I was able to gather.
Yeah, which is interesting. Shows how separated they kind of are too.
Yeah, not even that, just some of their dialogue, like some of their jabs at each other, and that anger, being frustrated. It's no what's the word I'm looking for? It's obvious at times Robert Shaw is actually drunk on set. We'll be realistic. That was a big deal, a big thing that they had to deal with. He was a severe alcoholic, so him showing up drunk wasn't uncommon, but the man's line delivery was next to none. The most famous scene, obviously, is when he's talking about, like A Doll's Eyes. He's having his whole montage about, the ship sinking and everything, and talking about being stuck in the water with all the sharks. And that dialogue, they weren't expecting that scene. So when they showed the scene of Brody and Hooper looking back at him in shock, that was their real reaction. They weren't ready for that whole monologue that he gives. Which is impressive. I mean, he's drunk as hell giving it. But it's one of the most iconic scenes from the movie, arguably.
Yeah, definitely.
It's crazy. And we'll give it some other credit. I mean, the only other major, interesting characters, you have his wife, Brody's wife, who's very relatable. I do love her. She comes back in a future movie, which we'll get to in Stay Out of the Water month, unfortunately. Yeah. Anyway, back to happy thoughts. she was really great in this movie. She really is. She's really great. She's a great supporting character, very relatable, very likable. Again, doesn't contribute a whole much. Just she adds to Brody being so, likable. I mean, that's really what she does. And then you have the mayor, who I love, the mayor in this movie. Even right now with, it being 2020 and having some of the pandemic issues we have going on, I think you can relate some of our leaders to the mayor. No one wants to be the mayor of Jaws, let's put it that way, with opening things too early. It's funny how that's even a thing now still. It's funny how that's relatable to today.
Yeah. Stay out of the water, stay out of the restaurants.
No. It's just crazy. This movie did so much for the industry. If you really sit it down and you think about it, this movie did things that are still felt today. It was the perfect terror film. I mean, any horror movie / terror, a terror films I would think of as a different. I think terror is different than horror. Terror is more of lines of the unseen stalking, attempting to kill you. The Strangers is another good example. It's one of my favorite horror movies. That's a perfect example. You don't see it there. It's the unknown, but you're completely terrified of it because you can't do anything about it. It's there, and you don't know how to deal with it. And this is the perfect example of that movie.
Well, I think also, too, how some of these movies use your own mind to help them gain an advantage, as, like, in your mind, things are different. In your mind, things change. Mm-hmm. In your mind, the shark is bigger than what it is. In your mind, the shark is more gruesome than what it is. Mm-hmm. So by them using things that can help them do things like use your brain to work against you, to maybe make you more scared or more nervous or more on edge, right, that's like a great thing to do in like a movie.
No, it's crazy how much this has influenced horror to today, to be honest. If you want to question where your movie stands as far as being scary, I always say look to Jaws. I would say, does it ring true? Is it innately fearful, or is it just exterior fear? I think innate fear, being the internal fear, is a lot stronger than external fear, and this movie is the perfect combination of that. It truly is. The last thing we'll talk about, and then we'll wrap up this review. This movie, you can argue, is the start of the Hollywood blockbuster. Before this movie, there was nothing on level with how popular and explosive this movie, how much money this movie made is incredible. That affected the industry forever. I mean, it really did. Think about what we have now. We have the Avengers, we have superheroes, we have Hollywood blockbusters every couple months, at least 2 or 3 even at some points. This movie did it first. There were lines. There were tickets sold out everywhere to get into this movie. People were buying the book off the shelves. Like, oh, what's this based off of? Oh, what's that book, Jaws? This was the start of that. How crazy! If you think about it, how crazy is that? The merchandising, putting Jaws, stupid shark face on everything, putting the word Jaws on everything. Yeah, it's funny too. It's just a shark. Like, how much could you market it? They marketed the hell out of that shark. He was on every. I mean, I have like 3 shirts at least with Jaws on it. Let alone, toys. I mean, how do you make toys of Jaws? It's crazy. Lunchboxes, plushies. Whatever you want to name it. There's a Jaws product for you. A toothbrush. It's just crazy. This was that. This was the start of that mass marketing craze with movies. This started all of that.
The other thing too is, think about how much they spent on this movie compared to how much they made. Mm-hmm. And how much movies are spending now, and the amount of money that they're making.
Right.
So you can compare it and contrast it to like that of how good this movie did just in its time and how it's still living up today.
Yeah, I mean, this movie's a classic. It is. It's a cinematic achievement that comes along once every God knows when. I mean, if I could recommend any movie to you, this would, again, I said earlier, if I were to pick 5 movies, this movie's easily in my top 5. Not a second guess to that list. So, giving Jaws a score. I don't even want to give Jaws a score because I think you know what I'm going to say. I give Jaws...
I think you're going to say an F.
I give Jaws an A+. Jaws is an instant classic. If you haven't seen it, you're hurting nobody but yourself. I mean, you should watch Jaws. You know what? It's even funny. I like to watch it even on 4th of July just because it all takes place over the 4th of July weekend. I just think it's kind of fun. It's always like a classic.
That's true.
You know, it's good. Get a bunch of people, just hang out, you know, even pop a few beers, check out the movie. It's good just to hang out and watch. It's just one of those movies, no matter how old I get, from watching it really young to watching it now, I'm still enthralled. I mean, there's movies I'll play on my phone, I'll do something else. Usually when Jaws is on, I can't. I have to watch it. I truly love this movie. John, where do you stand on Jaws?
I give Jaws an A. I think it's my first A on this channel too.
Yeah.
But definitely, Jaws is definitely worth it. Jaws is one of those movies you can always watch and stands up through time.
Right.
Like, a lot of things don't make it past maybe 10 years of watching or something like that.
Yeah.
But this is one of those movies that you can go back and watch again. Right. Even with the things that you notice sometimes that you didn't notice the first time or notice the second time.
Right.
But there's just those little things, and just makes it such a great movie. And the acting still holds up to this day, no matter what.
Without a doubt. Legendary characters. We'll never forget Quint's little, you know, speech about the USS Indianapolis and a doll's eyes. Like a doll's eyes. Curious, though, I will ask. No plus? Just an A?
No, just an A.
Just an A. Not giving it that plus.
No.
I don't think he's broke. You've not broken yet, as far as
I don't
channel.
break.
Who knows when you're watching this in the future, he might have. But
that's my first A.
That's his first A. Ow. Well, hey, it's a good movie. No, you gave Jurassic Park an A, didn't you?
Oh yeah, so my second A.
Second A. All right.
So two classic movies get A's.
So think about it this way, and this is a fun last thing to add. We wouldn't have Jurassic Park without Jaws. We wouldn't have had Steven Spielberg's career without Jaws, if you really think about it. There's so many classics that man brought us.
Well, Steven Spielberg wouldn't have a career without Jaws.
Yeah. It's just crazy how this movie defined a legacy of some of my favorite films and is an amazing film. It's just crazy. Who would think a stupid story about some guys hunting down a shark would be one of the best movies ever made?
Seriously.
Something truly to think about.
Crazy.
Anyway, at this point, John, where can the people find us at home?
You can find us on YouTube at TheReelMovieGuys. You can find us on Twitter at TheReelMovieGuy. On Twitter, hit us up on Twitter. Hit us up on YouTube in the comments. We like to hear from you guys. We like to know your opinions on things.
Yes, please do.
And also, you can find us on very many platforms on podcasting.
Yes, for your listening pleasure, we are available on podcast formats such as iTunes, Spotify, Anchor, Google Podcasts, Breaker, Radio Public, and Pocket Casts. Be sure to give us a listen at any of those fine places. If you are already right now, we do truly appreciate it. Just search Real Movie Guys. I'm sure we're going to pop right up. Well, we're at the end of the episode. I'd like to thank you all so much for joining us for the first episode of Stay Out of the Water. We'll be reviewing a ton of movies that'll bring fear back to you. Next week, we're going to be talking about Jaws 2. I would say maybe the less impressive sequel, but we got some thoughts. We'll be talking about it next week. My name's Kevin. This guy over here, he's John. We are the Real Movie Guys. Real guys, real movies, real thoughts. And don't forget, stay out of the water. We'll catch you next time.
See ya!